Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the BUSR and the fifth round of the Formula One Spring Championship here, taking us to Hungary. I'm joined here by Weltorium. Hi, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you yourself?
I'm quite good, thank you. And yeah, I mean, we're halfway through the season now, and to be honest, I don't remember the standings at all. So, over to you.
Yeah, we've got quite a few different things going on in the F1 scene at the moment. Obviously, in the terms of the standings, Chris's Chris has been a dominant factor through the first half, leading the way in the championship still, even with the drop round last time out due to the fact that he had won all previous races prior to that. Then the two main contestants to him, Ben Mills and Alex Lansdale, had a yet another good performance, making up for their losses at Netherlands, where they was leading the way, but picked up pit lane penalties, this time both securing that 1-2 position. But Ben Mills ekes out in front, but he would be wishing that his Williams teammate and Josh Woolley was putting in some better performances and not picking up anywhere near as many penalties as he has been, to make sure that those constructors' standings could be even closer between the Williams and Aston Martins. But right now, Aston Martin is dominating the way. Then we got Luke Sawyer and Oren Lally, who finally picked up his first podium this season, but they're doing all right in the Racing Bulls. Meanwhile, they are competing with the Red Bulls of Newton Geek, who have been solid performers across all of the season. Liam Doherty then in the Alpine, a little bit by themselves in the terms of the higher points per scoring positions, but a consistent factor in the top five. There have been quite a few differences across the season with how they have played out, but that is the main focus: is can anyone catch the Aston Martins, or will they just be left behind, and will Ben Mills be able to actually contest by himself without a helping hand?
I mean, yes, absolutely. And we'll have 35 racing laps today to find out if that can happen. We will be heading into qualifying in just a couple of minutes. Currently, it looks like we've got about 14 people in the lobby, maybe 15. And yeah, I'm sure everybody is waiting to get started here. So, I mean, we know that the Hungaroring isn't perfect for overtaking in real life Formula One, but hopefully today we'll be able to see a lot of action out on track. It's personally one of my favorites to drive. That being said, I'm not that great of a driver, so maybe our drivers here will have something else to say.
Yeah, it's a bit of a driver's circuit, though. A lot of players love the winding nature of it. The ups and downs have a nice little bit of a flow here, unlike some of the more regimented circuits like Miami that have been coming onto the calendar recently. It does flow with the landscape. It isn't brute forced into the scenery, and it allows more naturally flowing corners that these cars in the ground effect era just absolutely eat up in terms of being able to eke out extra lap time compared to previous generations. But it has still always been a difficult track to make overtakes work, especially in DRS trains, and especially when you have poor ERS management. It's going to be heavily reliant on managing that well and effectively, but also tires can matter here sometimes as well, as sometimes it takes a lot of effort just to make sure they make it through a stint.
Yeah, I mean, I reckon we'll be seeing a lot of two stops today, and I'm sure at some point we'll see a safety car, so that's just going to give free stops anyway. But people are now readying up in the lobby, so we'll be heading into qualifying in just a moment. Any predictions?
If Chris's Pittacoris is here, Chris's Pittacoris will find a way to win. Even if he's not indeed. Even if he's not in peak form, he's just a wizard on the pad. I don't know how he makes it work. That the pads always have a negative, and he just makes it work in ways that are mysterious to me as a fellow pad player. Well, meanwhile, everyone else just looks at him and goes, "We can beat him. We're good enough," and then fail to do so every week.
Yeah, absolutely. But here we are. Well, I have literally never seen a timer for like I'm going to switch to the scene now. I have never seen qualifying timer before qualifying actually starts like that.
Huh. Strange.
That is very strange, but here we are. We're about to start qualifying, and let's see what happens. Wow, that was weird. I do not like that.
We have 14 drivers in the lobby at the moment. Obviously, the main drivers at the front: Nuke, Christos Pilocoris, Ben Mills, Luke Sawyer here today as well. But we do have a few other drivers like Geek, Ben Huskins, Assassin J, who have all done decent performance as well. We do have Seth also in this week in the Alpine instead of Jake. Then we got DCX Box in as well in that Kickselber, GMT in the Haas. Ben Huskins is replacing this week Alex Lansdale in that Aston Martin, unlike in the previous weeks, however. And then Apex Predator, Alpha in the Mercedes, and IDK in the McLaren. So we've got a few mix-ups here today in this lobby, and not quite a full lobby either for this evening, unfortunately. But we're always seeing hope that the drivers who are here can give as much potential as possible. As we see Christos Pilocoris, the DC Xbox, Luke Sawyer, and Assassin J going for the intermediates poles as we go on the outlap with Ben Mills, who is in that stunning alternate Williams livery. That looks so good in the white.
Yeah, it is quite a nice livery. Refreshing to see. Also, Luke Sawyer in the alternative RB livery here. I'm loving the pink.
Yeah, obviously the game has allowed drivers to use some of those in real life one-off races liveries, and it's so good that we actually get to see people using them, because sometimes these liveries are better than the standard liveries, with the Racing Bulls being one of them. Just a superb pink livery that they have curated. Now, as we ride on board with Luke Sawyer, he is going to be on that intermediate. That's just going to mean he's going to have a lot less grip turning through the corners and a lot less innate traction and ability to keep into the track. But the main benefit is obviously going for that Inters pole does give you extra points if you're able to get it, but having Christos Pilocoris in the mix will always make it a higher contest, and you give yourself less opportunities to set a solid lap, even though the lap does ramp up later on. But we'll go on with Ben Mills then, the first driver across the circuit, braking late into turn number 1, snapping it in. The iconic steering style of Ben Mills that you will always notice when you ride on board is just how aggressive he has always been on the steering wheel. As he then rounds through this next section of corners, you see how important it is to make sure that the line is neat and tidy, as these cars will give you a lot more grip as long as you're keeping it planted. And then one of the funnest corners to drive, in my opinion, the F1 game is followed by an off-angled banked corner, but then gets to the most unique part of the circuit, because it's the only part really where you kind of have to not do a sweeping corner through the chicane and then back into the sweepers, which just keep unwinding. But it is really fun because it winds into the natural flow of the terrain, and then you just try and use all of the exit curb, but you don't want to use too much as it's really harsh on penalties on that specific corner. A little enough a snap through that section, and then you wind through and try and use all of the exit, even going into the pit lane just a little bit. And then you got this corner, which some people like to take tighter, some people like to take a little bit later, but both lines tend to be at least equally on pace. With Ben Mills, 1:14.799 is the pace setting margin for right now. It's going to be a little bit of a while before we see any of the other contenders put in a lap time, as Newt is only just on an out lap and the rest have done Inters laps. And that first Inters lap being a 1:24.97, he really displays the difference in performance.
Yeah, we've got Alpha coming across the line next here, and apparently GMT UFC also crossed the line at some point. Yeah, Alpha coming across the line next. Ben Mills, I felt like that wasn't a particularly clean lap. It looked a little not great for me. So I'm sure we'll see big improvements there. I reckon we can go into the 1:13s. Christos Pilocoris currently taking provisional Inters pole here. That's an extra point for Christos. I'm surprised Ben Mills isn't going for it, being a potential title contender.
Yeah, going for it does mean you lose out on an extra lap to potentially try and gain points overall. So they're always at least a disadvantage and an advantage towards it. But Ben Mills, after that last weekend, closing up the gap down to 16 points in the driver's standing. 19 points is the gap from Christos to Alex Lansdale, who is taking a drop round this weekend. That's another crucial rule, though, here in the BUSR. There is drop rounds available to the drivers, so if they do choose to miss out just one race, they do at least not get the negative effects of that one. Otherwise, your worst result will be written off across the season, allowing allowing you to have a much more consistent affair. But Newts is a purple first sector with a nicely hooked up and amazing looking one-off Japan livery from last year in that Red Bull. Newt's always been a solid driver in terms of qualifying, and across the last few races has just struggled just a little bit to stay with the leaders, especially once dropping out of the DRS zone and keeping the tires to extend across the stint with its full pace margin. But right now, tucked behind this McLaren, might get held up just a little bit through this final sector, and on that exit actually loses a wing plate, and that's going to be Newt's first lap attempt put towards the pit lane instead. At least he catches it before rounding the final corner, so that will be quickly into the pit lane as we see the McLaren trying to now go to start one of their lap, but that might be a little bit of an impeding that may or may not get investigated.
Sure the stewards will be having a good look at that later on. But stewarding is always done post-race, as far as I know, so we won't know the results until probably next week. But currently got Geek out on the lap, purple sector 2. And yeah, let's see what they can put together here.
Obviously, trying to replicate some of the success the Red Bull cars had in the era, but actually coming into the pit lane, unhappy with the lap in the end, as they are still yet to set a lap time as well. Currently got 9 drivers then with a lap time, but only the top 5 have done it on actual tires. That leaves Ginka and the McLaren out on track to try and put in lap times. Everyone else has already came back into the pit lane, with some drivers already coming back out on the lap. Ginka will jump into P number 3 with that lap with a 1:15.6 directly behind Ben Huskins by only 0.8 of a margin, which leaves the McLaren, who already coming into sector number 3, trying to hook up the track in the sector where he ended up impeding that of Newt. This time with no one to impede him. Instead, he will try and send it through that final corner, dash it towards the line, open up that DRS, and it will be a 1:17.1, leaving some room for improvement.
Yeah, next we've got oh, not Ben Mills, we've got Luke Sawyer out, starting then next flying lap, followed by Ben Mills closely behind. So let's have a look at what Sawyer does. Currently in P9, but that is with Intus tires, so this will be their first representative lap on the softs.
Yeah, Luke Sawyer being a driver who has got a couple of podiums this season, especially earlier on, had some really good tyre management that allowed them to check some differences in strategies that really paid off. As they fly through the first sector, you see the difference in tyres, 1.2 seconds up on the intermediate, and it's the final sector where you really start to notice that difference as you swing through the quick middle sector, which seems to go by in just a matter of a few seconds. But it is a little bit longer than that, as the end of the sector actually comes through on the back of this corner, which means you go through all the tights and twisty stuff, but that's really far across the line. As he is 3.8 seconds up on their personal best lap time, they end up going across the line and having to chalk this lap up, and sadly that will mean they're going to have to try and find it again. Ben Mills nowhere near as far across the line, 1/10 improvement so far on their already provisional pole lap time, just trying to eke out the performance, which is the one benefit of not doing the Inters pole, is that you just get to put in a couple of solid laps and not have the same risk of only getting 1 or 2 good laps in. You get that extra opportunity to refine yourself, and he does find that refinement of a 1/10.74. English is failing me at the moment. It's 1/10.5 over his previous lap time, extending the lead by nearly 1 second over P2 at the moment. But we do have to wait for a couple more representative lap times, as we do have Christos Pilakouris also on a lap at the moment through that final sector. It's going to be interesting to see what their first lap time is going to end up being, as we see them rounding the final corner in the distance. They're going to jump to P number 2, but Ben Mills, having that second lap of improvements for right now, is keeping that provisional pole.
Yeah, maybe I was wrong about some people being able to go into the 113s. They're quite far off. Maybe I just didn't know how good Ben Mills managed to hook up their first attempt. Usually we see a lot more improvement than that, but nevertheless, Ben Mills just about keeping pole position for now. and I'm sure Chris's will come knocking on the door.
Yeah, Chris is always known for good qualifying, but the main feature of Chris's Protocourse's races has been the start to finish dominance. It's just once Chris gets a lead, and if he breaks DRS, he is able to maintain it through amazing ERS and tyre management. GMT then across the line, not with an improvement that time around, but potentially just starting a lap. Alpha now with a 4/10 improvement so far. Can they find anything through this final sector? As it's one corner to go, not really a place where you find a lot of lap time, but they find a lot of lap time themselves, clearly making a mistake on their previous lap with 8/10 of an improvement. They jump 4/10 behind Newt, who currently sits in P number 3 with that 1:15.1, 3/10 of drifts of Christos Pilakoulis, which is about what we normally see from Newt.
Oh, and is not having a good day. Another invalidated lap. I don't know how many tyres they have left, to be honest.
Yeah, obviously that's another game, especially on the shorter lap time circuits. You can put in so many lap attempts that you end up running out of tyres. As we are seeing most drivers now coming into the pit lane, I won't be surprised if we see Newt come in as well. The main issue is, especially at a circuit like Austria, where you can just put in a really, really quick lap times, is that ability to run out of tyres. But the one thing with the one-shot qualifying is it does mean that you're not necessarily eating into your race tyre pool like you would be on a full race distance. You always have enough tyres to make it work. The only issue is, are you going to eat through all of the softs that may or may not be used in the race if a late safety car does come on out, as those are the main tyres you want to be on if it's a last splash dash?
I mean, yeah, I don't know what the strategy would be here. I'm guessing medium hard. Maybe two mediums and hard.
I personally go for 2 stops at Hungary, but I'm really bad at tyre management. I bet that these drivers can do a 1-stop, but it might be a case of what we see in Zandvoort, where if we do get a slightly early safety car, the drivers will just opt towards the 2-stop strategy instead of the 1-stop in almost all circumstances, just because the 2-stop is significantly easier to pull off, especially when you're not worrying about tyres. Whereas if we see drivers out there on the 1-stop strategy, they're really going to have to go long and do really good defensive lines and hope that people get enough traffic. But driver who's really looking to set some lap time improvements then, as they did invalidate their previous lap time, is Luke Sawyer. With them being out on track so early, they potentially might hit some traffic on this lap, but they also give themselves enough time to get one more lap in, potentially, if they make a mistake early and back out to take a cool-down lap. But it all depends on if they have enough fuel to do so, or if they've put it all on the table for this one lap that they really need to nail on through. As we're seeing them now rocketing through this section, Luke Sawyer always looking to try and improve their qualifying positions, always consistently around P5 roughly, rather than at the absolute top flight in qualifying. It's really that race pace where they find that more higher consistency really pays dividends. As the Sauber gets way out of the way, there's going to be a clear track now towards the final end of the sector, and this time they keep it within the circuit. 3.8 seconds up at the moment does mean they have to find some extra time in this last sector other than the tyre difference, so they're going to have to try and get this nice and neat through the corner. Make sure you are getting as tight as you can without dipping down into the little divot that you can see within the corners. Running to the exit, it's going to be across the line, 1/10 down of Christos Pilakoulis, and into the 1:14.9s for Luke Sawyer in provisional 3.
Yeah, and Christos Pilakoulis coming up next.
Yeah, 2/10 improvement so far. That will put him in contention with Ben Mills, especially if they find some more improvement for this final sector. They really need to try and get this hooked up now, as they want to try and do what you see Christos does best, and that is take pole position provisionally over Ben Mills, who sits in the pit lane and watches Christos Pilakoulis find more lap time than what Ben Mills has found so far, and putting the statement that they are here to race. even though they just took a drop race, they still are on absolute peak form. As we switch over to Seth Martin, the only one repping the Alpine here today, hopefully to put in a good performance. Not got any good lap times just yet. With a 1:18.8 as their current lap time, they will want to be finding something, but this is going to be a bit of a slower lap then. It's going to be a 1:17.3, so it's a good improvement, but no improvement in position, just shy by 200ths of a second, as we see the McLaren now of starting their own personal lap, as a lot of drivers dash into the pit lane or just wait it out to take a later lap, as we do see track evolution across the session. But DCX Box is one of those drivers benefiting from that track evolution, then jumping up to P10 with an 8/10 improvement on their current lap time. Well, some of the drivers that they are racing again potentially have an extra lap to go. One of those drivers who needs to find a lap now is Geek, who really hasn't set a lap yet that's clean, as they've invalidated all of their previous attempts. This time they're green until the end. They just need to keep it on circuit on that final corner, and they will, and that's going to instantly jump them to P number 5 by 0.3 of a second, and just behind their teammate Newt.
Probably not quite what Geek was hoping for here, but considering that's the only clean lap they've set so far, I would take that as a win. Lots of opportunity throughout the race, hopefully, for them to make up position, but P5 isn't the worst place to start.
P5 is never the worst place to start. Only 2 positions out of the podium, and that's really the best paying positions here in the BUSR. Just finding consistency matters the most. Apex Predator is going to try and find that 1 position snipe over IDK with a 2.5 improvement. Just now forcing that McLaren driver to potentially go out again, but they don't have the lap time unless they get out on track right away.
And looks like Newt will be starting a lap in just a moment. Behind, we've got Chris is just starting a lap in front, actually. Behind, we've got Ben Huskins also on an out lap, and I'm assuming Geek will be coming in here. Yes, indeed.
Well, we see Ben Mills retiring from the session, potentially ending up crashing on their lap or not finding a lap time improvement, so opting to back out of the session early. We also see Seth Martin not able to find any lap time improvements before they retire out of this session, but that leaves Newt then to ride on with, to go around this lap once again around the Hungaroring. A circuit that has been a staple on the F1 calendar and one of the best qualifyings across the season, is delivering here just a little bit with a little bit of drama for some of these drivers not finding clean laps so far across the sessions. Newt now has an opportunity to try and make a lap time improvement, as Ben Mills won't be finding any of their own. So the Christmas Pedicurus is going to be comfortable at the top spot unless Newt can find something here. He really needs to nail through these sectors, but he's only up by a little bit, and it's really hard to find that massive lap time improvement he needs. He needs to find over 0.6 of a second, which is nearly impossible through this last sector, but it's not impossible. We've seen it from Red Bull drivers in real life do it before. Can he live up to Verstappen's lap in Monaco and find that lap time in this final sector, or will it be just shy? It will be shy, unfortunately for Newt. They find a little bit of time, but they still don't break that 1:15 barrier. While we ride on board with GMT, who's invalidated their lap time, so that's going to be them stuck in P10, and then we go towards Chris's Pedicurus, finding even more time over the lap of Ben Mills. 400ths of a second through that first sector. What can they keep finding across this lap with only Luke Sawyer and Alpha left on laps as well? As we see Alpha with an invalid lap time as well, which means Luke Sawyer will be the last one across the line, who also doesn't find a lap time improvement, as we see a little bit of post-race shenanigans with the Ferrari in the wall, leaving for the Mercedes to run into it under AI control. But Chris's Pedicurus, do they keep finding more time? They find a little bit more, but it's only a couple hundredths of a second. They've really eked out a lot of lap time, but they're getting a twitch on through that last corner. Then they are going to still run, watch this Mercedes in the distance, and come across the line. And we won't see if they do find a lap time improvement, but they still will be on pole nonetheless, as Chris's Pedicurus keeps making more statements on why they keep leading in the championship.
Let's see. I'm not sure if there was an improvement, but if there was, it was very little. By the looks of things.
Yeah, a small improvement from Chris's Philikoris on their previous lap time, but neither way, still on pole position. So it didn't matter if they lost a little bit of time in that last sector or not. Leading the way from Ben Mills once again, with Luke Sawyer following up, and then Newt behind that in P number 4, with their teammate in Geek being the second highest of any double manufacturer in the lobby, with Ferrari being the next ones down at the back end of the top 10.
Yeah, I mean, pretty stacked front row there. I've got two very fast people. However, only one can take the win. So, will it be not Luke, Ben Mills, or will it be Chris's Philikoris, who we've known to absolutely dominate races? However, Ben Mills has recently been performing quite well as well. So, yeah, I don't know. It looks like it's going to be a sunny race, so that's as helpful. A few less shenanigans in the mid and backfield.
Yeah, I see. Another fun point to mention just before we head towards the race is that Geek today has reached their 100th race mark in the BUSR. A large milestone to make considering how few races we do per season.
That, yeah, I think they've been here for 3 or 4 years now. And through that time, we've done a lot of racing. But yeah, I don't know. Geek, I don't think he's won a championship. He's still trying, and well, we'll have to see if this is going to be his or not. Probably not, but can't give up. And yeah, the race is gonna start soon. So my predictions is that off the line, Chris will hold the inside line, and then safety car somewhere in the back.
Yeah, obviously always a potential for a safety car. As we have the 5 red lights then into the air, very quick turnaround here at the Hungaroring, as we have one of the longest runs towards the line, and the yellow flag is already out into the air as we start. Chris's Philikoris doesn't even need to defend the inside line, as they clearly pull away, and we get no bowling in the background, but we nearly get a little bit of a tire touch between the Mercedes and the Ferrari coming on the exit of the corner, but it's a little bit of a single file with the Sauber tucking in the background. But we do see that Alpine trying to sneak on the inside of that Haas, but it's going to be a long way around the outside in the next corner, which makes it a lot more difficult. But will that Ferrari try and make a move on that Haas, or will it be forced on out wide onto the exit corner? We do see that end up happening from Assassin J, but they keep their nose on in on the exit, but it's not quite enough to keep that race or battle ongoing. So it's all clean at the front of the grid then. Chris's Philikoris is able to lead the way of Ben Mills, Luke Sawyer, Newt Geegan, and Ben Hoskins behind. All of them right now keeping tucked and tidy. No huge gaps formed on this opening lap of all these drivers, but Chris's Philikoris is trying to make that gap nonetheless. And we always see the early pace of Chris's Philikoris on the colder tires has been a very solid aspect of the race, as we see Luke Sawyer locking up. You don't want to be doing that too much, or you're going to flat spot these tires, as we do seemingly see all of the leaders on those medium tire compounds then as we come across the line for the first lap of racing with a 1:22.5 as that opening lap.
Yeah, the 5 people at the front, no position change, a little bit of position change towards the back. And just about everybody starting on the mediums, with only Ginka on the hards. And yeah, the race looks like it's already settled down. I guess that's the Hungaroring for you.
Some people may call it the Hungaroring, some people may call it just a little bit of a circus of looping us around the circuit. What's going to be interesting to see is we all know that Luke Sawyer can keep on the back of Ben Mills and Chris's Philikoris across a race stint, but can find it hard to actually challenge to make the overtakes work. The real story narrative is, can Newt this weekend keep on up? It's been 2 weekends in a row for Newt now. Netherlands and Miami, where they've been in that train for like about 10 laps, but then they end up pitting sooner than everyone else and can never get back on rhythm with the leading racers, and that all destroys their race across pace and in terms of just the average that they're able to perform, sometimes even having to pit an extra time due to that increased tire wear that we typically see coming out of Newt. Already down 7/10 of a second coming on to lap number 2. These laps will continue to go at a rate of knots, with one of the fastest lap times on the circuit below 1 minute 20s typically across an entire race stint, as right now we're in the 1 minute 18s with Luke Sawyer directly on the back of Ben Mills, trying to make something work, but we'll always have to deal with Ben Mills having the DRS. But a driver who doesn't have to deal with fighting someone with DRS is that a DCX box at the back, as we see A getting the DRS this time around as they change over positions, and the McLaren driver can pull away with that second opening of DRS that you get on the back-to-back straights, but you only find the two pieces here at the Hungaroring.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a fairly long DRS straight down the main straight, and then just a little bit of DRS going from turn 1 to turn 2. Or is that, I guess, turn 3? I don't know. It's a weird one.
It counts as turn 3, but for F1 cars, it's the second turn that you actually have to take. These cars are way too quick to even find that little bit of a kink on that straight as a corner, as we do see Ben Huskins and the Ginker now dropping off at the back of Geek and the top 5, which was a little bit to be expected, so long as Ginker can keep all of the drivers behind in that Ferrari. They are on the hard tyres, but they will have to put up a bit of a defensive class here, because that pace difference between the tyres in theory can give Ben Huskins the opportunity to try and make this overtake work, but the gap ahead is already starting to econ out, so Ginker's has to do this defense with no DRS assistance, and you can already see them derating this early into the race. That is not good signs for their ERS management that is so critical at this circuit, but we do see it from the leaders as well. You always are reliant on that ERS usage just a little bit, as we see Geek falling off of the back of Newt in the background, just hovering on that 1 second margin.
Yeah, I mean, got the front 4 pretty much clearing. Geek was out of DRS there for a second. Looks like he's caught back up now. But still, the front 5 in their own little train here. And then from Ginker down to P12 as the next train. So we've now got 2 trains here. 3 trains, I guess. And yeah, it's just trying to stick with the train. Trying to maybe look for a move somewhere. And then try to get a slightly more favorable pit stop.
Alex Predator already picking up 2 track limits penalties, up to 6 seconds already. It's a rapid pace to pick up. They need to keep it a little bit more neat or tidy to get through this race. At this rate, they might risk disqualification. If they keep this up, they need to keep it on the track limits, as they are harsh here at the Hungaroring. But a driver who's going to be pushing quite hard early in this early stages then is Assassin J, who with a lockup still gets down the inside of that car. As we see Seth spinning around in the background of this fight for P number 12, as they both promote one position, as Seth ends up spinning it from that leading train and breaks up the gap again. Assassin Jane now 1.3 seconds behind Alpha due to that void left behind. As we switch back over to the leaders, then a little bit of a parade out in front. All 5 drivers still within DRS of each other. In front of the crowd, 5 laps have already gone by. One of the longer races on the calendar due to the fact that they do a lot of laps, yet the track time isn't quite as short as you find at Austria. I think in real life race distance it's only 1 lap difference, although the lap times typically about 10 seconds longer.
Potentially, but Austria is also just a very fast track. Got a lot of fast corners in Austria, whereas there's a few slower and mid-speed corners around the Hungaroring. So that would make sense, because the Grand Prix is mostly about distance rather than time, except for Monaco, because that just takes too long.
Yeah, Monaco being the main exception, where they don't necessarily go fully off of time. They try to make the 300 kilometers, but it's the standard. But as we look back here, we see IDK getting past the Haas of Apex Predator and now trying to pull away into P11, but a big 4.2 second gap looms in front of them to make any more progression into this race, just sitting outside of the top 10 now and down in P11. Meanwhile, the leaders, Gink has fallen off of that train once again, down 1.2 seconds back off of Newt, as we ride with Luke Sawyer in the midst of this train, trying to benefit by not being one of the leading pair and getting to manage those tires just a little bit more and getting pulled along from these two leaders who have to push to make sure they're not getting contested through the cross of the circuit.
Well, I don't know how much they gain from being in the middle rather than losing, because of course you get some dirty air, and then that causes tire wear to be even worse, particularly in these cars. So yeah, I really don't know. I think Chrysis is the one that's having the best time right now, because they know they have the pace to keep up with everything, and I forgot what I was going to say, because we just had some action on track, but they know they have the pace, and they also have clean air, so yeah, they're happy. Everyone else behind, they don't want to be driving too close, otherwise the dirty air really plays a big factor into their tire management.
Yeah, it always has played a big factor, but the one thing that has been noticed a little bit on later F1 generation games, as we see Ben Huskins going a little bit over track limits there, with GMT piling on the pressure. We'll get back to that point, as it's going to be interesting to see if GMT can really benefit off of the fact that Ben Huskins now has no DRS on the cars in front and is seemingly starting to struggle a little bit here in the middle of the race, but able to pull a lot of time through that chicane and then able to neutralize that pressure that GMT has put onto them just for now. Going back to the topic then, dirty air in the games, not necessarily as realistic as it is in real life, as it does increase tire wear just a little bit, especially due to the slip, but if you're able to control the slip, you're able to save yourself a little bit of tire wear. But the main benefit is being able to control your ERS to just coast along and being able to be a little bit safer on the tires through the corners, and then burning the ERS through that DRS as assistance as well keeps you in play. But we see Christopher Piakoris increasing the pace, or everyone else starting to struggle, as the gaps now are widening slightly across the entirety of the top four. Now 1.1 seconds to Chris Piakoris. Looks like just on the back of Ben Mills, did drop out of it for a moment, but has worked their way back in, and Newt now also 1.3 seconds. This is typically where we see Newt find it a little bit harder to keep on up once they're falling out of that DRS range, whereas these top three we've seen consistently still at least somewhat keep with each other.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know what kind of tyre strategy Chris is going for, but if he was on a two-stop, right now is the time to start pulling a gap and pitting in maybe the next 3 laps. For the first stop, I don't think the mediums would be too happy for too much longer.
Yeah, the medium tires will start to wear away, and if they're on the two-stop strategy, which potentially we see Ben Mills already diving onto lap 8, we're seeing a really early pit stop here coming out of Ben Mills. This is even earlier than what I would have expected for a two-stop strategy. This means unless you have 2 sets of hards available, you're going to have to do a stint on the mediums that are going to be way longer than this first stint.
So he is going on to the hards here. I mean, maybe the hards can last a lot longer than we anticipate them to here, and then the next medium stint is going to be maybe only another 8 laps or so.
Yeah, potentially enough 8 to 10 lap stint on the medium tires, but we really did start to see Ben Mills sliding around a lot on that previous set of tires towards the end of that stint. But right now, looking down to where they've fallen into the traffic, they have got themselves a 2-second gap to the McLaren in front. But with the fresher tires, and with that is an indication of the heavy tire wear, they're going to catch that gap up really quickly, especially with the pace difference we're seeing between the drivers. But we've seen the McLaren sliding out of the corner anyway, so that's going to be them sliding down the order all the way down, side by side, even through the chicane, trying to keep into position. But now they've got Seth on the rear end as well, how to get back up to speed, but behind the 2 drivers with penalties in front of them. A costly mistake out on the McLaren driver at least affords Ben Mills a little bit more track space to try and make this early pit stop work against everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, Ben Mills already only 1.5 seconds behind GMT UFC. We've got Geek coming into the pits now. probably going on to the hards here. Yeah, looks like that's the hards. Yeah, yes.
Yeah, hard tires is a little bit more expected, but it is always a costly strategy to go onto double hards, as they can have quite poor pace. But at this point, these drivers will be wanting at least a safety car at some point, just to get a couple of free laps with a lower tire wear. As we see one, the Haas now also coming into the pit lane. Potentially Ben Mills coming in early is going to start and instigate the rest of the drivers to come on in, but right now no reaction out of Luke Sawyer or Chris Spinacoris.
Yeah, I mean, they must be a lot more confident on how far their tires can go, or they're just looking for that safety car potentially. I mean, you've got some action brewing on track, and if there isn't a safety car soon, who is that? That is Newt spinning it, and oh, that's not a good one for Newt. Oh, that is. I'm so sorry, Newt. We're gonna watch you suffer.
Yeah, that's a really awkward spot to spin for Newt, as they end up spinning on a part of the circuit where they lose a huge bunch of lap time, and they now are struggling to get back up and going. They will eventually get back on track, but now all the way down in P13, one of our top runners, we're seeing the Aston Martin of Ben Huskins really trying themselves on the brake and gaining huge distance onto the Ferrari of Assassin J. It's going to be a race in the pit lane that we didn't expect to see due to the wide gap in the margin, but we do see that Ferrari getting out in front, but only just barely. That Aston Martin now directly on the back of Assassin J, when the gap was much bigger before, and they might not be able to find anything in this first corner, but with how good they seemed on the brakes, and that lockup already coming out of the Ferrari, that might hamper their exit speed now. So potentially one of the best opportunities for Ben Huskins to make an overtake, but they're going to get forced to the outside line. They're both on the same set of tires, so no tire advantage to be found, but the pressure piling onto Assassin J, two early lockups onto the stint, is going to really hamper them down the line, as that tire wear and potentially rumbling can affect their consistency across the stint. But we do see in the meantime Newt retiring from the session after that spin, potentially not feeling quite the best with themselves after making such a costly mistake.
Yeah, it really would have been a struggle to really gain many points there from that position. So if they weren't feeling it, then that is fair enough, completely understandable. But we've still got action out on track. We've got Alpha coming into the pits now, and Ben Mills has done a stop. However, Luke Sawyer and Chris Pilacoris still have not. I wonder how long their mediums can last for. Maybe they're really hoping for a safety car right now.
I think they really are starting to hope this. Obviously, Hungary has one of the shorter pit lane lengths and times in the lane. As we see, Alpha still coming out in front of that Sauber. Ben Huskins stuck behind Assassin J, but is able to get through that first corner and get past. Now behind that Sauber as well, who's yet to pit and struggling. There's a little bit of traffic in the way of these faster drivers. A little bit of a moving chicane, as some may say as well, with 11 laps on the tyres. This is a really good stint length, though, coming from the drivers who have been able to extend this far. But Ben Mills is catching and catching at a rate of knots across compared to everyone else. It's less than 2.5 seconds behind Ginka, and Ginka's only 5 or 6 seconds behind that of Luke Sawyer. So really, Ben Mills now only 8 to 9 seconds behind Luke Sawyer after already making a pit stop, as we see an amazing move. Yes, that Sauber's on older tyres and has been off the pace just a little bit, but the confidence from Assassin J, you still love to see it either way.
Yeah, absolutely. That's some good hard racing there, and we love to see it. What else is there to say about that? But yeah, those tyres definitely not helping DC Xbox there. But maybe they're trying to go for a one-stop at this rate, considering they have a 6-second penalty. They'll probably have to serve that in the pit lane, if I was to guess.
Yeah, serving penalties in the pit lane, sometimes the game still doesn't let you take, and depending on how you've ended up picking them up. But looking towards the front of the grid, Ben Mills is directly behind Ginka already, and that means that he's now only 6 seconds and a bit behind Luke Sawyer. He's actively on top of Luke Sawyer's pace, burning through that ERS and just pushing like a madman on this stint, really trying to make this offset strategy work, as they were stuck behind Chris's Pilacoris if they did follow on the same strategy. So they do opt to change. And we see DC Xbox making a mistake and dropping a lot of time. Ben Mills already past Ginka and now eating into the gap towards Luke Sawyer, as Chris's Pilacoris is able to find a little bit of better pace compared to Luke Sawyer ahead. In that, Aston Martin has pulled 4.7 seconds over Luke Sawyer since Ben Mills has dove into the pit lane, but already finding 1 second. Ben Mills is really showcasing the potential of being on fresher tires, and it's not something we've seen in real life before. We've seen it on multiple occasions in Hungary in really late pit stops, where we have seen drivers. We've seen Hamilton do it most iconically against Verstappen, where he pit with less than 10 laps left in the race and still caught up the entire time in the pit stops, just due to how slowly you can go. The main reason why you see this difference in strategy though here at the Hungaroring is, yes, you've got these corners that do wear on the tires heavily, that makes you go so slowly, but the curbs aren't dangerous enough to first force early punctures like they are at some other circuits.
Yeah, I mean, the only curbs that are really dangerous are sausage curbs in the chicane, but if you're taking those in an F1 car, you're doing it wrong anyway, because it unsettles the car too much with the stiffness of the suspension. They're really only for, like, I don't know, GE3 cars, and slower than that.
Yeah, we do see Luke Sawyer coming into the pit lane just before Ben Mills ends up catching them, but this undercut strategy is still going to be strong, as that first outlap on the new set of tires will always be a little bit slower, as you have to get them up to temperature, but that will be switching over towards the hard set of tires. 15 laps in means you have to go 20 laps on the hards. We see GMT spinning around in the Haas, dropping it out of the top 10 with that mistake. Seth Martin now back into the top 10 in P number 9, and the McLaren of I into P number 10. Alpha currently running in P number 5, getting a nice little bit of a promotion, but Ginka right on pace with Alpha at the moment, trying to get back into that net P5 after these pit stop strategies. He ends up falling on through, but that's where Seth comes into the pit lane after their mistake earlier on, put them out of cycle with everyone else.
Yeah, and Ben still catching up onto Chris's here, and I mean, Chris's has to pit in this lap. Those tires must be dead, and I think Luke probably pitted at about the right time, because Ben may need to pit again towards the end of the race. We'll see how the tire wear is on the hards, but they are 6 laps older than Luke's, so yeah, it would be tough to say, but I wouldn't be feeling too confident in them lasting to the end.
Ben Mills will have a fresher set of hards towards the end after coming into pit lane later on, but will still have to struggle with trying to find that lap time and gap nonetheless. Right now we're leading the way, but your provisional leader potentially still that of Chris's Pilacoris. Seeing this alternate ways of strategies is probably the best we're going to see in terms of combat and action here at the Hungaroring. But Luke Sawyer has caught up a little bit of that gap towards Chris's Pilacoris. It did extend over 4.8 seconds at its peak, now down to only 2.2 seconds. But Geek, who's running the same strategy as Ben Mills right now, has jumped the previous race leader of Chris's Pilacoris, but we'll have to hope that this strategy can pull them into play a little bit more as we get a train forming behind that of Alpha and the Mercedes. Ben Huskins picks up a penalty alongside, which gives Ginka a huge advantage in this freeway fight.
Well, I just saw it. AI still has not pitted, so those are now 15 lap old mediums. Huh. That must be horrible to drive.
That's a long way to go. Yeah, it is affording themselves lap data in the long term, and the hard tires can go longer, but just how much longer can you go on the hard tires is a gamble that the driver will be making in this circumstance. Obviously on lap 17, I do expect him to come into the pit lane sooner rather than later, as we see Chris's Pilacoris now in front of Geek after getting those tires up to temperature. and Geek now starting to be on tyres that will be falling away. How much of the time can Christos Pilakouris make onto Ben Mills before Ben Mills comes into pit lane for fresher tyres and will then start charging down Christos Pilakouris instead? As we see contact between Alpha and Ginka as they're trying to get past. Ginka needs to try and get it effectively, and he wants to get it done as soon as possible because he doesn't want to keep feeling the pressure of Ben Huskins, but instead ends up making wheel-to-wheel contact and potentially carrying a little bit of floorboard damage as well. But they do get by in the end, and now we're going to want to pull as big as a gap as they can across this back end of the circuit before Ben Huskins finds their opportunity onto Alpha. Even though that 3 seconds is on Ben Huskins' name, right now he's seeming quick enough to challenge that of Ginka for P number 5.
Yeah, I mean, P number 5 is quite a ways behind the top 4. Luke Sawyer is trying to fight for P3 against Geek, and then, I mean, Geek maybe a little bit too far back to fight Chrisos, but Chrisos has already gained about 2 seconds of time from their pit stop. Since overtaking Geek, I mean. So Ben Mills may be under pressure very soon. I don't know what will happen, but I do think that Ben will need to pit again.
This is exactly what you like to see out of your championship leader, setting the fastest lap on their first clear air after passing Geek on these new hard tyres and really laying down the pace advantage that they have in this Aston Martin. They know their strengths and they are gauging how good these tyres can last until the end, and they're pushing. They're going to force Ben Mills to push up the pace and have no room to full-on tyre save and potentially force Ben Mills to pit earlier than they will want to pit in the end. Still, they will end up having to pit onto the hard tyres and do less laps than Christos Pilakouris and Luke Sawyer, but he needs to eke out tyre delta. He needs to find a couple of extra laps to really find a difference in tyre speed across the rest of the stint towards the end. And Luke Sawyer is on the back of Geek now with the DRS wide open, and with that tyre advantage we'll find it really easy to sail on by with the benefit of the extra traction coming out of the corner, just making the overtake look really easy on the back end.
Yeah, ERS plus DRS making that overtake quite chill. And Geek getting left in the dust now, losing a lot of time. Slightly older hard tyres there though, so perhaps not too surprising. Maybe a little bit past their prime already, whereas Luke's would be in their prime.
Luke Sawyer's tyre is going to be in the prime. 7 laps are the difference between that of Ben Mills and Christos Pilakouris then. Currently less than 7 seconds already between the two drivers. Christos Pilakouris is absolutely flying at the moment, but we actually see Geek picking up a 3-second penalty. We do see that Geek is in a little bit of a world of their own, as Ginka is 7.5 seconds behind on that alternate strategy of the 1-stop compared to Geek who's on that 2-stop. So surely we'll see Geek pit and have a lot more pace in the later stages of the race, but they have a lot of time to gain, with 7.3 seconds being less time than half of the pit stop already. Geek has a lot of effort on their hands, and they made it just a little bit harder with that 3 seconds.
Yeah, the 3-second penalty is really gonna hamper Geek's chances of a podium here. But if they can keep their pace, then they should be able to secure P4, and it should be a good points haul anyway. Chris is still gaining on Ben Mills. Gap is down to just 6 seconds now. Absolutely using those tires to their max. 15 laps left to go, and Ben Mills is going to be under pressure in about 2 laps time, I guess. Yeah.
Ben Mills has been staying it off just a little bit better in the last few laps, but we do see that the gap now between Christos Pilokoris and Luke Sawyer is now 5 seconds. So Christos Pilokoris is finding a lot more lap time than what Luke Sawyer is on the exact same strategy. So it might be a race then between Ben Mills and Luke Sawyer for P number 2 instead of P number 1, as Christos Pilokoris is just absolutely acing it once again here in the BUSR. Your previous season's champion, your current season's title leader by 16 points over Ben Mills, coming in after taking a week off last time out at Miami and really demonstrating their true worth in the championship with yet again a consistent performance and enough of pole position to their name for this season. They're going to want to make this strategy work to keep extending that points lead after Ben Mills and Alex Lansdale caught up decently last time due to Christos Pilokoris having to miss a round here at the BUSR. But it's not going to be over at just this alone. Christos Pilokoris obviously still got a couple races after this one to go, with the races at Qatar, Brazil, and then rounded out by Abu Dhabi. But we've heard that Christos Pilokoris really struggles at Qatar, especially as a pad player. That circuit really is very harder on the pad because the tire wear through just a little bit of sliding that is harder to remove from your driving on a pad is really detrimental at that circuit, with the gap now down to 3.7 seconds during the duration of me speaking. We are really seeing that the tire difference is really now playing effectiveness again. But Ben Mills actually into the pit lane a few laps to got a decent amount of tire delta now onto Christos Pilokoris, but it's all into Ben Mills' hands. What can you do once you switch onto these hard tires with 5 laps of tire delta over your competition?
Ooh, that's only 5 laps of tire delta. That's going to be rough. Yeah, I think Ben really wants to get maybe another 3 laps in before having to pit, and then maybe putting onto the mediums and getting those to the end, but mediums would not last to the end here in this case. So having to pit a little early onto the hards and only 5-6 lap tire delta, that's not going to be enough, I don't think. Ben Mills would need to really pull some speed out right now. But Chris is now leading the way, 5 seconds ahead of Luke Sawyer down in P2, who is 6 seconds ahead of Geek down in P3.
Yeah, I don't think Ben Mills will have to deal with Geek as lap traffic, as Geek is on the same strategy as Ben Mills and potentially will be pitting this lap. As you did say, though, with Ben Mills going onto the mediums, they couldn't have gone onto the mediums as they started medium, so they would have had to switch tyre compounds. Geek, however, does have that at play. Switching onto the hard tyre compound for their middle stint gives them the opportunity as a real back-end slider. Will definitely indicate them coming into the pit lane. But with 12 laps to go, I'm going to guess that they're going to go to another set of hards if they have any available, though.
Yeah, I didn't realize Ben Mills did medium, so yeah, having to go into the hards here, really not the ideal strategy in my opinion, but what can you do? Yeah, Geek going onto the hards here. Got 12 laps on those hards, should be very nice to the end, but that 3-second time penalty still playing a factor. So yeah, people are now starting to pull in for their second pit stops. We've got Ben Huskins in just behind for another fresh set of hards. And yeah, everything's staying pretty stable for now.
Yeah, for them,
maybe having a look on Seth Martin there, a little too far back, really do anything, but got another handful of DRS here, and not quite enough though.
Yeah, Seth's comfortably back in the top 10 after that issue earlier on. Ben and Geek are going to have to chase down everyone else in this session then, as they are on that strategy of pitting for extra tyres. Geek, 4.3 seconds behind Assassin J, with 3 seconds to find over them though, to make sure that they keep that position, and a long way to Ginker. So Ferrari potentially set for a really good drive a result. But Ben Mills showing the pace that they do have on hand. 7 seconds is the gap to Luke Sawyer already after their pit stop, and now setting a new fastest lap of the race, a 1:17.0, finding even better lap time than what Chris Pilakoris did on the early parts of the hards. But potentially because they have no worries of pushing on these tires, with Chris's, though pushed a little bit, did have to make sure that they're not overly pushing, because they still need to get to the end overall, as the gap towards Chris Pilakoris is 12.5 seconds. Can they do that in just 11.5 laps?
I mean, yeah, they need to be doing over a second per lap to be able to get an overtake by the very end. So, yeah, Ben really got to put his right foot down right now and, yeah, give it everything they've got. I reckon they can catch Luke Sawyer and maybe get into P2, but for taking the fight to Chris's will be tough, because Chris is now running in clean air. They can maybe relax just a little bit, save those tires to the end. Yeah, 10 laps to go now.
I do like that Ben Mills has tried to make the alternate strategy work. However, as we saw from them, they were stuck behind Christos Pilagoras with no room to even try and make an overtake in that first stint of the race. Now, the game is in their hands. Do they have enough raw pace to make the two-stop strategy work, or will they lose even with an effort? I think for the size of Ben Mills, they would have preferred to at least try to make the victory fall into their grasps, rather than just dying at ease. And we see Assassin J coming into the pit lane, so Geek won't have to make that overtake, and has 11.5 seconds to find on Ginka, so even more time than what Ben Mills has to find on Christos Pilakoris at this stage, or if not about the exact same. But Geek has to find enough of 3 seconds after finding that time to Ginka to keep that position. So Geek's job may be even harder than that of Ben Mills to get P4 for themselves. They should be comfortably in the top 5, however. But Ben Mills won't be happy with only a P3 finish when they know so much more is on the table.
Yeah. I mean, the gap keeps shrinking here. So that's all good. GMT UFC. I'm not sure what the timetable. Oh, okay. They were coming out of the pits just as Apex and DC Xbox were getting the overtake on them. So, yeah, going to be a close fight at the back here. Lots of penalties at the back, so I guess position does actually matter for them at least. We've got Geek, Ben Huskins, and Alpha all with 3-second time when he's here. So for them, position will matter also.
Oh, Ginka actually coming into the pit lane to go towards the two-stop strategy. I thought he had pit quite late on, but instead does come into the pit lane. Will be now the one chasing down, but it's on the medium set of tires for this second stint. So they will have really fast tires on their car, but that will give Geek over potentially P number 4, almost guaranteed, unless Ginka sets some blistering lap times. But Ginka hoping to still at least get Ben Huskins on fresher, softer tires without 3-second penalty, and it's already only 4 seconds behind. So with that penalty, it's about 1 second they need to gain, and they don't need to make the overtake.
Yeah, and to catch Geek, they only need to make up about 7 seconds of time as well. So Ginka really doesn't have to do too much, and with these much faster tires, they'll probably be able to at least get ahead of Ben Huskins by the end of the race here. So Geek may need to keep an eye out on the mirrors. But Ben Mills now closed the gap to Luke Sawyer to just 1.7 seconds, and is going to be looking for an overtake, probably at the start of the next lap. So Luke Sawyer's 7-lap older tires are now starting to really give them trouble. So Ben Mills may be able to just about catch up to Chris's Pilakoris, whose tires are also aging at the same pace, Luke Sawyer's. Ben Mills, however, still on fairly fresh hards.
Ben Mills losing a little bit of time there, sliding quite heavily in the dirty air of Luke Sawyer, and is caught up to him through the worst part of the circuit to make the overtake work. So he's going to sit behind for the entirety of this last sector as Chris Aspilicueta is still going fast. 8.7 seconds to Luke Sawyer. It's grown over 1.5 seconds during the duration that Ben Mills has stuck behind Luke Sawyer, making this effort so much harder for Ben Mills now. It was about 7 seconds before Luke Sawyer, now who's defending all the way to the inside. He does not want to give up this position. It's going to be really hard, and you see just how hard it is as the grip and the DRS is enough to get Ben Mills past, but they slide on exit, open up DRS again, and now stare down 8.5 seconds to catch Chris Aspilicueta, which is going to be a mountain of effort because they now need to put in roughly 1.3 to 1.5 seconds of lap of quicker pace to even give themselves a chance to make this overtake, unless Chris Aspilicueta's tires fall off the face of the planet.
I have not driven the F1 game, so I don't know how long those tires would last here usually. So currently 12 lap old tires. Do you think they will fall off the face of the earth?
It might in the last 2 laps, but it might not be enough. It really depends on if Ben Mills can keep pace. If Ben Mills does lose pace after hitting roughly the 40-50% tire wear mark, then no. Ben Mills needs to be able to keep pace even on slightly worn tires. Otherwise, then this overtake is not on, even if Chris Aspilicueta is hitting 80-90% wear, which really starts to degrade your pace. But really, the pace degradation hits at about 40-50%, and that's when you really start to slide and notice it. So Ben needs to keep the pace while they have it all the way to the ceiling, foot absolutely slammed to the floor to make this work. A driver who doesn't have to keep the foot slammed to the floor to at least overtake Ben Huskins is Ginko, as Ben Huskins did pick up a further 3 seconds towards their name. But I bet you Ginko's still going to be trying their absolute hardest to try and catch Geek, though it's a mountain of effort, as we do get a nice over-the-top angle on Ben Mills, which just really shows how aggressively they turn this car through these corners. Definitely one of the hardest and the most aggressive drivers on the steering wheel I think I have seen in the F1 games, especially on this edition. Whereas last year on the F1 24, where it was definitively the fastest way around the circuit, F1 25 not necessarily guaranteeing that to be the case, but the gap is now down to 6.5 seconds. But as they rounding round to start lap number 30, once Chris Aspilicueta comes across the line, that will be for them 6 laps left. So yeah, Ben Mills still has to find over a second a lap.
Yeah, it's starting to look a little less likely. I think Chris is maybe faster in the 3rd sector, because Ben Mills was starting to lose a fair bit of time there, but is gaining some time, at least in the 1st sector here.
Yeah, Ben Mills is always able to find the time a little bit more through the middle sector than anywhere else, which is really where the tires pay dividends. But Chris Aspilicueta is doing a good job on the ERS management to still eke time everywhere that they can. Clearly has got a good grips of what the car can do at the moment and is maximizing every bit they can. We see actually Alpha is able to get past Ben Huskins, as Ben Huskins potentially has made a mistake out on track somewhere as they are dropping down the order actually into the pit lane with a front wing change. So maybe picking up damage and slipping on those soft tires is going to push towards the end, but what can they get out of this race? They may even slip behind Seth at this point as well.
I mean, yeah, they've slipped behind Seth and behind AI, so really not what Ben Huskins was hoping for. But those are fresh, soft tires for the last 5 laps. They will be pulling off some overtakes here for sure.
Yeah, potentially going to get back up to P8, but it's a 13-second gap to Assassin Gen. So Ben Huskins, he was net P6, even with those penalties, is now staring a worse result, no matter the circumstance, unless someone else hits a downfall on their race of their own. Still got 6 seconds to the name as well, so they have to put a gap even if they make these overtakes.
Yeah, 6 seconds is not little. I reckon they can stay in the top 9 once they make the move on AI here. But if they were to catch up to Seth, that may be a little trickier, particularly because the softs do fall off quite hard.
Yeah, obviously behind here, behind the McLaren is trying to just wait until towards that straight. The only issue here at Hungary is unless you've got such insane grip and pace and the confidence to do it, which is why I still praise Assassin J, even when they made the move on tyre differential. Just to keep the confidence to go for an outside move, it's really, really risky, but they still stuck with it anyway earlier on in this race, as we do see Ben Huskins getting on by. Ben Mills is now down to 4.45 seconds as he's rounding this final corner to start lap 32. They still have 4 laps left, and he is eking the gap ever so slowly, but he's running out of time. Ben Mills is going to stop playing on his mind now that he hasn't pushed enough earlier on in the race, or maybe didn't switch strategies early enough in the race, or maybe at just some point did something, or didn't hit a bit too much traffic, or is just going to have all of those thought processes now going through their head. They need to keep it calm and collected. They need to make no mistakes. Otherwise, they will squander this opportunity. They need to focus purely on this lap time, but they lose 0.3 of a second through that sector on the back end of it. And that's exactly not what they want to see. But now through this chicane, you really see where they're gaining that lap time. Chris Aspilicuoris' tyres will start to be hitting a critical threshold now, as they need to save every single little bit that they can. A clear gap between Ben Mills and Luke Sawyer of 7.8 seconds now, but Ben Mills will not want to finish P2 when they can see Chris Aspilicuoris' car ahead of them every single corner, getting closer and closer and closer, and it's now down to 3.4 seconds as we're coming through this final corner, and they need to be able to actually catch up into DRS before this straight. They need to make the overtake before this straight, as the start finish line is so early on down this straight that it's practically not an overtaking chance on the final lap. So really they need to make the move either halfway round lap 35 or need to make it on lap 34, which is just the next lap. So they've only got a couple more opportunities then to really dig down and dig deep to find this lap time and hope that Chris Aspilicuoris' tyres eke away. But you're seeing that energy level. Ben Mills has already been using everything. He doesn't have anything left in the tank. The pace that he's been setting is exactly the pace that he has left. Whereas when we switch over to Chris Aspilicuoris, they have just a little bit extra ERS as well. So even if Ben Mills catches on up, if it's not on that main straight before the final lap starts, it's not going to be enough. 2.8 seconds at the gap, but it's still such a large margin to find. There's always an opportunity. They never can count out Ben Mills. We've seen it before. Ben Mills has a really good pace on their hands, and you can never count on someone not making a mistake at some point. But this is exactly why Chris Aspilicuoris was last year's champion. It's why they're the championship leader. It's situations like this where the strategies differ, but Chris Aspilicuoris keeps the consistency and knows their plan of action. They keep it smart, they keep it consistent, and have so far successfully staved off Chris Aspilicuoris' pace, but they are catching the lap traffic of the two Hasses ahead. Only 2 laps left then for these two drivers to battle it out on these different strategies. But the gap still sitting at needing 1.2 seconds a lap of pace to catch that of Chris Aspilicuoris. The lap difference in age is 6 seconds at this point, and we've seen that Chris Aspilicuoris' pace was starting to fall off around 12 laps left. Unless they hit the critical threshold of more lap degradation, Ben Mills is going to find this drastically hard unless this lap traffic plays critical role into this battle between them, as Chris Aspilicuoris is catching them before Ben Mills at the moment, but may not even hit them unless their pace continues at this rate.
I mean, yeah, Ben Mills really needs to hit that DRS detection point, but they're just a couple of tenths out of range, 4 tenths shy, so they will need to make the overtake. Oh, and there's an accident! That's got to be a safety car. Surely. No, the game can't put a safety car out late. Okay, never mind. So, Ben Mills, 1.2 seconds behind Chris Aspilicuoris on the final lap now, and he has to pull the move somewhere on this lap.
He needs to find the move somewhere on this lap, but might not even find the opportunity. 1.1 seconds, still adrift of Christos Pilakouris, not quite on their rear end. And at the moment, Christos Pilakouris is still staring down lap traffic in front of them. It's not holding Christos Pilakouris up. If anything, it's pulling Christos Pilakouris along, and the gap between that and Christos Pilakouris in the car in front is dwindling. It's 7 tenths, it's 6 tenths, it's going to be 5 tenths of a second in just a moments of time, but there's nowhere to make a move. We've seen the Aston Martin in front trying to make a move on the Haas. It's Christos Pilakouris trying to make the move in defense to keep this position, and this is really where you can only find the overtake, unless it's a last corner lunge, unless it's some kind of a miracle way on the exit, unless Ben Mills has found ERS somewhere. He's 3 tenths behind. It's now gaining up to 5 tenths again. He is on the rear end. He's tried. He's made a gamble. He's going to find the exit speed, but the line is right there for Christos Pilakouris to take. Once again, in the BUSR, he's your last season's champion, and he keeps compounding upon it. This season has been pure domination. He has not lost a race that he has competed in. He has won every single one besides Miami, which he wasn't there for, and he will extend the championship lead even further here at Hungary. Meanwhile, Luke Sawyer comes through in P3, not able to keep pace with the two leaders on different strategies. Geek will be happy with P4. Ginker into P5, one of his best results of the season. And then we look further down the grid. GMT, DCX, and Apex will finish outside the points, but DTM is still on the back of Ben Huskins, who did get past and now is racing for that points position based off of penalties and the gap margin, as we now watch Assassin J and Alpha go through first, then Seth and IDK, the last two who aren't racing over that penalty difference, coming across the line 8 tenths of a second for that McLaren, but no penalties, no other actions behind. So Seth will secure that P8, but that just leaves us with the Aston Martin round in the final corner, and GMT has hit some kind of issue with Ben Huskins setting the fastest lap of a 1:16.8 on that soft tire as well. He does make up the gap and keeps that P10 ahead of GMT, but what a race at the front between Chris and Ben.
Yeah, that was a crazy finish. I mean, Ben needed half a lap to make an overtake. He would have probably made the overtake by the end of that straight had they had one more lap.
Yeah, and that's the issue with Hungary. It's one of the longest start-finish straights. We've seen bowling there before, but it's also caused such dramatic moments like this, where you can't make the overtake, but you still gotta give props to Christos Pilakouris, and you gotta give props to Ben Mills. Both choosing different strategies, both tied to down by only a few tenths of a second before the pit stops, and then ending the race, still only a few tenths between them, even though one did one stop and one did two, and one had to push the absolute hard out, and they still couldn't find enough in them.
Yeah, that was far closer than Chris would have wanted. Those tires must have been hurting by the end, and Ben Mills gave it absolute all, using every last bit of his tires, every last bit of his ARS there, and it was very close. Well, maybe we shall speak to some of the drivers now. Who shall we speak to first? Was Luke in P3?
Luke was P3, yeah.
Shall we speak to Luke first then?
Welcome on in then, Luke. How are you finding yourself sat in P3 this time around?
I'm good. Good to get another podium. Can't complain. It's annoying that Chris and Ben are just aliens and need to touch some grass. But apart from that, I have nothing to complain about. It's the best I could have done, especially given I chose probably the wrong strategy in the one stop. But I can't complain. I'm happy.
Obviously, you mentioned that you went for the one-stop strategy. Is there any reason why you're not happy with going that strategy when we saw it so close between Ben and Chris, even on both strategies?
Well, if you look at me and Ben on strategies, there was like a 10-second gap in between us. So if you look at Chris's, yeah, that's, he made probably the right call for him, but for me, I made the wrong one because I reckon if I did the 2-star, I'd be with the top 2, or at least a lot closer than I actually was. So it differs from person to person, but in my case, it was definitely the 2-stop that I should have done, but I didn't. But hindsight's a wonderful thing.
And well, next week you're going to, what did we say it was? Qatar.
Yeah, next race will be.
It is Qatar,
Qatar.
Yeah. So, do you think you can get another podium? Then, are you feeling confident?
Well, seeing as Mr. Woolly Blobs will be doing that one, at least that's what I remember. I'm not quite sure, but given my current form, my current pace, I can't write it off. If I do, I do. If I don't, I don't. I'm happy regardless. I'm having fun.
Oh, I was hearing that potentially Chrysis may be struggling at Qatar. Just some rumors. Do you think maybe you could even fight for the win?
When pigs fly, I think is all I can say to that. If I ever get a win with all of these little aliens, then I will never live it down.
Well,
I'd like to, but
we'll keep hoping for you, and I guess we'll see you out on track next time.
right, thank you very much, guys. Take care.
You too.
Have a nice one.
Right, next up, I'm sure Ben will be disappointed today, so let's speak to him. Hello, Ben. I'm sure that was a slightly disappointing end for you, but an insane comeback with the alternative strategy. How was the race?
It was very sweaty from my side. I thought, why not try something else? Once Chris has got me out of his DRS in the first stint, opted for the 2-stop, just came up short at the end.
Obviously, a bit of a gamble to go for the 2-stop, but clearly had the pace to nearly make it work. How do you feel that you was able to manage your pace across the extra pit stops?
Yeah, I'm pleased. I mean, I wasn't sure if the 2-stop would have been quicker or not, but I figured I had nothing to lose. If I had done the 1-stop, I would have been in the same position. I would have been second regardless, I think. And I thought that I was quicker than Luke, so I could guarantee second. But yeah, it was. I think I executed it well.
No, I think that was executed very well. Next week, you're heading over to Qatar. Do you think you can do a master strategy plan there as well? Maybe fight for the win?
Hopefully. I mean, I think it's a reverse grid sprint again. So, firstly, I've got to survive that before starting the main race, and then we'll look at strategy then.
Yeah.
Any more questions or?
I'm a bit dry in questions.
Yeah, fair. Well, best of luck to you, Ben, in the next race, and hope we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
All right, and that leaves just Chrysis Pilakoris. Hello, Chrysis, and congratulations on the win. How was the race?
Boy, it was a difficult one. I think, I mean, the 1-stop definitely was not the strap, but after the game suggested a 1-stop, so I automatically thought that was the one. And after I gapped, and I was like, "Oh, this is brilliant." And then I saw him box, and I was like, "I'm gonna get the Verstappen treatment in 2019 when Hamilton boxed in, or it took him on the 2-stop." Yeah. Even though I've had some like dominant drives, I think this was honestly my best in terms of racecraft and just in general how the management worked, and all around I think it was such a good drive with like winning with a strategy that was not the best one. So I think all in all I couldn't have honestly done much better.
So maybe a lesson in not trusting what the game gives you.
Oh yeah, in general, just don't trust EA with what they're saying.
Well, also, how did you feel going through those final few laps where you just saw that lap time coming down? Do you always believe that you had it on par, or did you have a little bit of a doubt at moments?
It's every lap. I mean, so every lap I was trying to like calculate the gap and what he needed to, like how much he needed to gap me by in order to catch me, and it was literally like the exact amount that I was calculating in my head. So I was like, this is gonna be close. And I also had the tire where it wasn't only Ben catching me; it was a tire wear as well. It was right on the edge, and I also had 2 warnings from lap 8. So in general, it was doubts everywhere. But yeah, the last like 5 laps, I think Ben also started to struggle on the hard, so the gap kind of started going down slower than what it used to be. So yeah, I think one more lap and he would have had me. To be honest, like the tires were just dead. I was sliding all over the place. So all in all, it was a very difficult drive, and well done to Ben as well because he was rapid.
Just one final thing from me. How do you feel winning every single race this season that you've participated in, other than the sprint?
Oh boy, got asked the same question last time. I mean, I don't know. Qatar's gonna be a difficult one starting from the back again. So, and that's not a track that I really like. Other than that, I mean, who knows? Potentially we could go for it, but it's gonna be a difficult ride. So yeah, I mean, if I don't win the next 3 and I come second and still get the championship, there's not much to complain, is there? So let's just see how it goes.
Well, best of luck to you in Qatar then, and hope we'll be here soon.
Thank you. Good night, guys.
Good night.
Right, well, I think that about wraps up interviews then. I mean, this was a
All
pretty
Geeks 100th race.
yeah, not bad for the 100 race. Shall we pull him in real quick for a little chat about his 100 races?
Yeah, he isn't sitting. He's sitting in the waiting room.
Yeah.
May as well.
Hey, Geek.
Hello.
Congratulations on 100 race starts.
Thank you.
Yeah, not as you said yourself, not too bad for 100 races. How are you feeling?
Knackered. But hit and miss, actually. Not really at the same time. That was just kind of me on my own. Yeah.
Obviously,
No, go on.
finish. Oh. Obviously, being a little bit on your own, as you said, do you think that there was any kind of ways where you could have congested further, or was there any doubts at any point with your penalty on the board as well, or do you had it all sorted for the position you was in?
Nah, I just didn't have the pace. I was just too slow. I'd done no practice as well. I just still need to figure out this game, even though it's been out for over a year. I just don't really understand where to gain all the time. I don't know if it's down to throttle application or something else, but no, just wasn't on the pace.
I mean, how you've been racing for 4 years now. This is your 4th year, so you're starting to run out of time to get your championship. Do you think maybe you could do something in the summer?
I mean, we'll see. I mean, I'm fair enough. I frauded the one when Cameron Searle was still around, thanks to his PC and his turn 2 at Vegas. So I mean, yeah, fair enough. I'll claim that one. I've had ones in AC as well, but yeah, F1 25 is just a whole different breed. It's difficult to overtake. Dirty air is really bad. I mean, I was struggling a lot after like lap 5 just to even remain with the top 4, and then Newt also lost DRS, and yeah, it's just insanely difficult when it's so competitive. We'll see in summer, but I probably have better odds of championships in AC or maybe even in LMU if I get round to doing that.
Oh, you should totally join LMU, as should everyone watching at home. Go check us out on Thread Finder and all that. We've got LMU, F1, and AC. So yeah, and do you have anything you'd like to say to the community geek for your 100th race?
I'm old.
Yep, we are unk
D- d-
status.
don't keep doing what I do. No, in all seriousness, if you enjoy it, go for it. I'm still here after 4 years, mostly because I just love the racing. I've had my moments where I can't remember specific seasons, but my first season, second race was awful. Yeah, I got first points in Hungary. I got first podium a season later. Championship ended in misery for one season. I got one back. No, it's full of ups and downs, but at the end of the day, if you just enjoy doing it, just go for it. There's just no point in hesitating, and
Couldn't
that's
have
why I'm
said
still
it
there.
better myself. Thank you for speaking to us, Geek, and we'll
No
let
worries.
you get on with your evening.
Thank you.
And yeah, congratulations on 100 race starts in F1 here.
Thank you, and cheers for the stream as always. Appreciate it, guys.
Right. Yeah, so that does actually wrap up the interviews, and I think that wraps up the stream. So thank you all for watching. As always, I've been Doom, and I've been joined by Weltorium. If you enjoyed them, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and go check out our partners at Grid Finder. They've got some fantastic series on, and check us out as well. Join our wonderful community. Geek was just saying it's a great place to be, and I mean, if you like racing, just do it. And I have nothing else to say. Do you?
Nothing else to say. Other than if you don't find this action interesting, then obviously that's up to you. But I think this has been a spectacular race, even with the track we've been on. So I think you guys should stick around.
Absolutely. Have a good one. Good night.
There is no place and no moment in history where I could stand and say, British begins here, now.